Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and welcome back to The Stack. Today we're going to be talking about Cutting Class from 1989, released by MVD as part of their Rewind Collection. This is their 4K Laserdisc collection, so this is number 4 according to the spine. And Cutting Class is best known as one of the first films that Brad Pitt ever did, long before his big breakout role in 1991's Thelma and Louise. So in 1989, when this film came out, the slasher craze was kind of on the way out. Only the hardcore franchises like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street were really still hanging in there. But occasionally you would get one of these and they would pop up. And the strangest thing about Cutting Class, not just that it features Brad Pitt, but it's directed by Rospo Pallenberg. And Rospo Pallenberg was the screenwriter or co-screenwriter for several of John Borman's projects, including The Emerald Forest, Exorcist II, The Heretic, Excalibur, and he's also listed as a creative associate on Deliverance. So he and John Borman were working together for a while. This is his sole directorial credit. It seems strange that Rospo Pallenberg, with that pedigree, should opt to make his directorial debut with a past its prime slasher that is not so much a slasher as it is kind of a parody of slashers, but it plays it straight enough. It's not so much a horror comedy as it is kind of a likable slasher, which I find an odd phrase to be applying to this film. It stars Jill Schoelen, who was the star of The Stepfather. She was also in Popcorn, Curse 2, The Bite, and also Phantom of the Opera opposite Robert Englund. Donovan Leitch is in it as well. Fans might know him from The Blob, 1988. And then, of course, there's that Brad Pitt guy. It's also got Roddy McDowall and Martin Mull. So it's a strange tone, and it's a strange little film. I can't say it's a really great slasher. It does hit the beats. There's a bit of a mystery as to who the killer is. The basic story is Donovan Leitch plays Brian, who is a childhood friend of Dwight, played by Brad Pitt. Brian has been sent away to a mental institution after he supposedly killed his father. But he's back now, he's been released, and once you know it, people start turning up dead at the high school. Of course, Brian is the main suspect, but we're fed several little clues that Dwight might also be a likely suspect. The whole thing kind of goes along. There's some relatively mild murders, not a lot of gore, and the characters are all kind of seemingly in on the joke. Everyone's playing it just a little heightened, so it's unclear as to whether we're supposed to be taking this seriously or not. Like I said, we have a few kills. There's a copier murder. There's a regular old throat slashing. And probably the highlight is when a flagpole appears underneath a trampoline whilst Dirk Blocker, son of Dan Blocker of Bonanza fame, while Dirk Blocker is bouncing on top of it as he's getting a little weekend exercise. As I said, this release of Cutting Class is out by MVD, but it's a strange release because in 2018, Vinegar Syndrome released it on Blu-ray as well. And the thing with the Vinegar Syndrome release is that it actually has more extras than this latest release by MVD. So let's take a look at the MVD release, but then I'd like to talk about some of the things that are missing that are present on the Vinegar Syndrome release. So we've got our slipcover. We've got 2 discs. We've got our 4K and our Blu-ray. And it also comes with a poster of the cover art. The extras include a 20-minute interview with Jill Schoelen, who talks quite candidly about not necessarily wanting to do the film, that working with Pallenberg was not the most pleasant experience. It's kind of refreshing to hear her be so candid about it, but it doesn't sound like it was a very pleasant experience. She was very much kind of told, stand here, say the line like this, which is never where an actor wants to be. She has that wonderful kind of scratchy, low voice with a really good girl quality to her. As far as scream queens go, I'd say if you're looking for the polar opposite of Linnea Quigley, you've got Jill Schoelen. And she still has that girl next door quality, talking about her experiences. She's still got that scratchy voice, and it's a really solid interview. Donovan Leitch appears for another 20-minute interview. He's actually much more pleasant about the film, seems to remember it fondly. He enjoyed working with Pallenberg. He was a big fan of Excalibur and Deliverance, so he was excited to work with him. He describes Brad as being a little more country back then, He also has a funny story about him and Brad Pitt cruising around and Brad Pitt flashing somebody and the cops getting called. Donovan Leitch was somebody who it seemed like he might have a career. He definitely had more screen credits than Brad did, and he was certainly the bigger name at the time, especially with the Blob having just come out. This doesn't get mentioned in the interviews, but in doing a little research, I found out that Jill Schoelen and Brad Pitt dated for quite a while afterwards, so that might explain why we don't hear much of her recollections of Brad. There's also this curious little Find the Killer promo item. It's about 5 minutes where they're talking about you can mail in who you think the killer is, and they'll send you prizes, a sports pack or a t-shirt. And then there are the basic trailers. Now, the strange thing is that Vinegar Syndrome had 2 additional phone interviews with Rospo Pallenberg, both conducted by Vinegar Syndrome's Joe Rubin. Those interviews are absent from this release. Also absent is an audio commentary, which featured the quartet from the Hysteria Continues podcast. So as much as I hate to say it, it sounds like the only reason to get this MVD release is if you're looking for a 4K UHD release of Cutting Class. And I have to wonder who all is looking for that. Because as harmless as this film is, it feels very much like a gig everybody kind of took because they needed the work. Roddy McDowall is not someone who's known for being particularly choosy. And the inclusion of Martin Mull seems to indicate that this was meant to be more of a comedy than it is. Fun fact that I did not know is that Donovan Leitch is actually the son of rock singer Donovan, who had such hits as Mellow Yellow and Season of the Witch, which figures prominently in George Romero's film of the same name. I don't know if that's reason to buy this disc, though. So that's Cutting Class. It's a perfectly serviceable late 80s slasher. There's not a ton of surprises. I will say that the final act is actually pretty entertaining. There's a lot of power tools in a machine shop. And there's a modicum of suspense as to who the killer actually is. But I have to say, unless you're looking for a 4K UHD upgrade, you do just as well to seek out the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray from 2018. Let us know your thoughts on Cutting Class in the comments below. There will also be another 5 titles in the description of this video. Please let us know what you'd like to see taken off the stack. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.